Mr. Fai, you can start your presentation or your speech. Stage is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Brigadier General Adnan Tanriwardi, the President of Assam, for organizing this very important conference on the internal security all over the world. Like Dr. Sidra, I would also like to really thank brother and friend Asim for being so patient and responding to all my questions, not only professionally, but also promptly. Dear brothers and sisters, when we are talking about the concept of security, it is one of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Tabarakallah, blessed be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whose presence is the source of security for the whole mankind. Allah also says in the Holy Quran, blessed are those people who are the protectors of the security of a person. When we are talking about internal security, we are talking about the freedom from danger. We are talking about the freedom from fear. We are talking about the freedom from anxiety. We are talking about freedom from torture and other freedoms. The topic, as Mr. Chair you have given to me, is the internal security in India and the case of Kashmir. I am sure you are not the only one. The whole world has been told that India is the largest democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, gone are those days when India was known as the land of Mahatma Gandhi. Gone are those days when India was known as the largest democracy. Today, there is no internal security if you are a minority. Today, there is no internal security in India if you are a Muslim. Not because I'm saying so, but because Dr. Gregory Stanton, the chairman of Genocide Watch, he says Islamophobia is not fringe element in India. It is a state-manufactured ideology. Indian Express, which has the largest circulation in India, Indian Express, it says there is xenophobia in India. Xenophobia means racism. It means that you can be discriminated against anywhere, anytime, because you are different, because you are a minority, because you are a Muslim. Dear brothers and sisters, the BJP is the ruling party of India. And we have a minister, Anant Kumar Hedge, the union minister, the federal minister. Can you believe what he said? He said, as long as there is Islam in the world, there is going to be terrorism. He said, we must uproot terrorism. We must uproot Islam to end the terrorism. I will give you just one example. There is one state in India. There are many states, more than 20 states. It is known as Uttar Pradesh. In 2021, there are 4,000 cases which have been documented. When the Muslims were picked up, when they were detained, when they were tortured, what was their crime? Because they were Muslims. What was their crime? Because they were wearing hijab. What was their crime? Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? Because they had eaten the beef. So today it is fair to say that India is a country of Islamophobia. Dr. Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, he said Islamophobia, it is a sad and disturbing trend of modern times. Dr. Stephen Schwartz of United States of America, he said Islamophobia, It is the condemnation of the entirety of the Muslim community. Dear brothers and sisters, today when I am talking to you, the Indian government, the BJP government, the Narendra Modi government, they are sacrificing the human rights in the name of national security of India. They have enacted so many laws: National Security Act, Public Safety Act, UFA, Unlawful Activity Prevention Act. You know why? To curb the freedom of religion, to curb the freedom of expression, to curb the freedom of opinion, particularly of the minorities and the Muslims. I will give you just one example of UFA. Under UFA, you cannot say a word against the government, particularly in the region of Kashmir. You can say anything you want to say, but you cannot say what Indian army is doing in Kashmir. If you will do, you will be picked up and thrown thousands of miles away in the jails of India. Then you are going to be lodged under UFA. That means you cannot go to the court for long 7 years. That means you cannot even be called, you can even be called a terrorist. One prime example, Ghulam Parvez, one of the internationally known human rights activists from Kashmir. Not because I am saying so. The Time magazine says so, Time magazine. Time magazine says Ghulam Parvez is one of the top 100 influential personalities of the world. But Narendra Modi says Ghulam Parvez is a terrorist. Is Ghulam Parvez a terrorist? Obviously not. But you cannot believe me because I am saying so. That's why I would like to quote Mary Lawler. Mary Lawler is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Human Rights Defenders, appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. She said, I quote, Ghulam Parvez is not a terrorist. He is a human rights defender, unquote. Amnesty International said no government should be allowed to sacrifice the human rights in the name of national security. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 4/4 says, all the rights, including the rights of the security of a person, cannot be taken away, even if there is an emergency. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may be wondering if this is happening in Kashmir, if this is happening on the streets of India, then what happened to the world powers? Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it, and it is true that the world powers have their own national interest. So they cannot frame their foreign policy in accordance with the moral values and the universal principles. That is true. But ladies and gentlemen, can you believe when world powers, when they are being told that international peace and security is threatened, when they are confronting the extremity like the situation in Ukraine, what happens? What do they do? Except to speak the language of morality. Ladies and gentlemen, the words come out of their mouth dripping with morality. One example, our President Joe Biden, just last month, October 12, 2022, less than a month ago. Just listen carefully. He is not the president of America, he is the president of the global power, superpower. He said, we cannot tolerate the illegal attempts of annexation. Then he said, we cannot tolerate the theft of a neighboring land by force. Then he said, we will always go for the international law and the UN Charter. At another occasion, he said, United States must not lead with the example of power, but United States must lead with the power of example. We would like to ask President Biden, can you pick up the phone, talk to your friend Prime Minister Netanyahu, talk to your friend Prime Minister Modi. Now is the time. You must lead, not with the example of power, but with the power of example. Take the case of Ukraine. The whole security is in shambles. The people are suffering. There is pain everywhere. We see it. The world powers, they feel the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine, and so do the Muslims of the world. But can we ask the world powers, why don't you feel that pain and suffering when it comes from the streets of Palestine, when it comes from the streets of Kashmir? Can you believe it? Not only NATO, but all the world powers. They said any volunteer, including Americans, you can go to Ukraine, you can fight shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian army, and they are called heroes, and I endorse that. But my only point is, are these volunteers going to be allowed to go to Palestine, to go to Kashmir? Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen with our own eyes the crimes against humanity are being committed on the streets of Ukraine. And luckily, the world powers felt it. So they invoked the Fourth Geneva Convention, the right thing to do. The only question arises, when are they going to invoke this Fourth Geneva Convention, when you know the crimes against humanity are being committed on the streets of Kashmir? You may ask me, are there really crimes against humanity being committed in Kashmir? Not because I'm saying so. Dr. Gregory Stanton, the chairman of Human Rights Watch, testifying before the American Congress in January of this year, he said, Kashmir is at the brink of genocide. And you have the power. He is asking the American Congress. He is asking the Biden administration. You have the power to stop it. The Committee to Protect Journalism, the New York base, they said the news media in Kashmir is being pushed to the brink of extinction. The New York Times, why should they invoke the Fourth Geneva Convention in Kashmir? New York Times says Kashmir has become the hell for the people of Kashmir. Huffington Post, the New York-based Huffington Post, it says the Indian democracy is dying in silence in Kashmir. A European parliamentary delegation, after having visited Kashmir, headed by John Cushnahan of Ireland. Why do we need to invoke Fourth Geneva Convention? They reported back to the European Parliament, Kashmir has become the most beautiful prison on earth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is there any hope? Yes, there is hope. Wallahi, there is hope. At least in principle. Why I am saying so? Because just 3 years ago, the Narendra Modi, the BJP government, they abrogated Article 317(35)A in Kashmir. Riazul Khalik, who is going to speak after me, he knows it. Dr. Mubin Shah, who is the president of Kashmir House in Istanbul, he knows it. We thought that's the end of the story of Kashmir. We thought that the death warrant to the cause of Kashmir on August 5th, 2019. But Allah has his own plan. You know what happened just 3 days later? On August 8, 2019, a person no less important than Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, he said, not so fast. Kashmir has to be resolved under UN Charter and under applicable United Nations Security Council resolution. Yes, there is hope. I will give you just 2 examples. One is the leader of BJP in India, the ruling party, and one is the leader of Indian National Congress, the opposition party. And the leader of BJP is not anybody. He has been the foreign minister of India during Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Yashwant Sinha. Yashwant Sinha said, we are making one after another mistake in Kashmir. There is no question of losing Kashmir. We have lost Kashmir. P. Chidambaram, Oxford graduate, he was the Minister of Interior and the Minister of Finance of Government of India under Indian National Government, National Congress. And he said, if we would like the people of Kashmir to love India, let us have a referendum. Then he said, India, if you are a true democracy, then giving the people of Kashmir a right to self-determination is the right thing to do. Now, what can we do? Ladies and gentlemen, who knows it better than Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, that Kashmir is a threat to the international peace and security, because Kashmir is the only region in the world. There is no other region. We share borders with 3 nuclear countries of the world: India, Pakistan, and China. India is fighting with Pakistan on one side. India is fighting with China on another side. That makes Kashmir the most dangerous place on earth. Now, what can Antonio Guterres do? He can invoke Article 99 of UN Charter. He does not need any permission from Joe Biden. He does not need any permission from Vladimir Putin, from the Security Council. He can intervene in Kashmir. He can bring the parties together, India, Pakistan, and the people of Kashmir, and resolve the issue of Kashmir. What can we do about Kashmir? Michel Bachelet was the president of Chile for 10 years. Michel Bachelet was the United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights. She issued 47-page report on Kashmir. One of the recommendations that Human Rights Council must establish an inquiry of commission. Dear brothers and sisters, Human Rights Council has 47 members. 16 out of 47 are the Muslim countries, ladies and gentlemen. 16 out of 47. And we had Dr. Amina from Algeria. Algeria is the member of the Human Rights Council. Why shouldn't we knock the door of OIC countries? Why shouldn't we knock the door of African countries? 12 African countries are the member of Human Rights Council. Why shouldn't we knock the door of European Parliament and tell them in the next Human Rights Council, why not to establish the inquiry of commission? You know why Michel Bachelet wanted to establish it? To assess the situation in Kashmir. And one more thing, what can we do? Never ever underestimate the power of pen and the intellect. You know how many pens we have? More than 1.3 billion of that. If we can use those pens, if we can use the intellect, brothers, it is your responsibility. It is my responsibility to talk about the suffering and the pain which is happening in the refugee camps of Rohingya Muslims, on the streets of Palestine, on the streets of Yemen, and don't think that Afghanistan is free, on the streets of Kashmir. So we have to use social media, and we have to tell them only one thing, ladies and gentlemen, just one thing, that world powers, President Biden, it was your president, President Harry Truman, in 1948, who instructed his ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador Warren Austin, to initiate a resolution on Kashmir. So resolution number 47, ladies and gentlemen, adopted on April 21st of 1948 by the Security Council, was not only co-sponsored by the United States, it was co-authored by the United States. That gave the right to self-determination to the people of Kashmir. Tell them, you have implemented in East Timor, you have implemented in Southern Sudan, why not in Kashmir? Why not in Palestine? Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, most of us I can see on the screens, we are Muslims. We feel the pain and suffering of everybody. That's not our choice. That's our obligation. That's our responsibility. We must raise our hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tell him the truth. We are very weak. whether we are in Palestine, whether we are in Kashmir, whether we are on the Rohingya refugee camps, but you are the Qadir Mutlaq. You are all powerful. We seek your help, and with that dua, you are going to see that not only Kashmir and Palestine, but even Ukraine, they are going to be free. With that, my dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.